"Sir, your wife is alive," said the poor boy to the millionaire at the funeral. William Harrison couldn't believe what was happening. The successful New York City businessman had lost his wife in a tragic car accident just 3 days ago, and now he was here at Woodlawn Cemetery, surrounded by important people who seemed more interested in being seen than in actually offering their condolences. Suddenly, he felt a small hand touch his shoulder. When he turned, he found himself face to face with a boy who couldn't have been more than 12 years old, wearing a worn striped shirt and jeans torn at the knees. "Sir, your wife is alive." "I saw her at the abandoned hospital in Queens," whispered the boy with eyes wide with sincerity. William felt a mixture of anger and pain. How dare this boy say something so cruel at a time like this? "Who let you in here? Security!" shouted the businessman, calling his men who quickly approached. "Get this kid out of here! How disrespectful!" he ordered, while feeling his chest tighten with the pain of his recent loss. "Wait, please, I can prove it. Mrs. Harrison is at the Old St. Clair Hospital on the 2nd floor, room 217. She has a half-moon-shaped scar on her right wrist," the boy shouted while being dragged out of the cemetery by security. William paused for a moment. How did that boy know about Elizabeth's scar? It was something intimate that very few people knew about. His wife always wore bracelets or watches to hide it, as she hated when people asked about the mark she had gotten in childhood. "Let him go," William ordered, his voice trembling. The security guards looked confused but obeyed, releasing the boy. "How do you know about the scar?" William asked, approaching the boy cautiously. "I go there to the abandoned hospital. I carry things from one place to another. They don't know I see everything," replied the boy. "My name is Gabriel. I saw your picture in the newspaper when they talked about your wife's accident, and I recognized her at the hospital." Richard Sullivan, William's longtime friend and business partner, approached with a concerned look. "What's going on, Will? Who is this boy?" "It's nothing, Rick, just a misunderstanding," William replied, stepping away slightly. Something in Gabriel's gaze made him want to keep this conversation private, at least for now. "Look, kid, I don't know what you want, but my wife has passed away. I saw her at the—" William couldn't finish the sentence. The truth was that he hadn't seen Elizabeth's body. The casket had been closed due to the impact of the accident, according to information from forensics. "You didn't see anything," Gabriel stated with a conviction that made William shudder. "They made everything look real, but your wife is alive. Come with me, I can show you." "Will, we need to continue with the ceremony," interrupted Richard, placing his hand on his friend's shoulder. "The guests are waiting for your final words." Gabriel took advantage of the distraction and slipped a small piece of paper into William's suit pocket. "Meet me tonight at the address written there if you want to know the truth," he whispered, before walking away, blending into the crowd and disappearing. The rest of the ceremony passed like a blur for William. He spoke the rehearsed words, received hugs and words of comfort, but his mind was fixed on the paper in his pocket and the boy's words. That night, alone in his mansion on the Upper East Side, William finally took the paper from his pocket. It was a piece of notebook paper, crumpled with childish handwriting. "Bryant Park, bench near the fountain, 8 p.m., come alone." And below, something that made his heart race. 5/16/2002, the day you met at Barnes & Noble. How could that boy know the exact date when he met Elizabeth? Not even his closest friends knew that detail. They celebrated that day every year. Just the two of them, with a special dinner. Looking at the clock, William saw that there were only 30 minutes until the scheduled time. Without thinking twice, he grabbed his car keys and left, dismissing his driver. He needed to go alone. Bryant Park was relatively empty at that hour of the night. William, wearing simpler clothes to avoid attention, found the indicated bench and sat down, nervously looking in all directions. "You came," said Gabriel, appearing silently beside him, as if he had sprouted from the ground. "How did you know the date I met my wife?" William asked, without beating around the bush. "I didn't know. She told me," Gabriel replied simply. "Mrs. Harrison talks a lot when she thinks no one is listening. She's alone most of the time, and sometimes I bring her food. She always thanks me and tells stories about her previous life." William felt the world spin. Was it possible? Or was he being victimized by a very skilled con artist? "I want concrete proof," he demanded, trying to maintain his composure. "If my wife is really alive, why would they do this? Who would be behind it?" Gabriel looked around, clearly nervous. "I don't know all the details, sir. I just know that your friend, the one who was at the funeral, goes there frequently. He talks to the doctors and seems to be in charge of everything." "Richard?" William asked, incredulous. "Impossible, he's like a brother to me. He talks about stocks, documents, and something about a complete transfer after the reading of the will," continued Gabriel. "I hear pieces of conversation when I'm cleaning, but I know your wife is there and she doesn't seem to be sick or hurt, just confused. They give her medicine every day." William ran his hand over his face, trying to process it all. "Why are you telling me this? What do you get out of it?" Gabriel lowered his head. "My mother worked in your house for many years as part of the cleaning staff, Maria Ramirez. You probably don't remember her." William tried to search his memory but couldn't associate the name with a face. "She always said that you and Mrs. Harrison were good people, that you treated everyone with respect," continued Gabriel. "When I recognized your wife at the hospital, I knew something was wrong. What they're doing isn't right." William examined the boy's face, looking for signs of deception, but found only sincerity in the young eyes. "Where is this hospital?" he finally asked. "In the far side of Queens, near Flushing. It was the old St. Clair Hospital, which closed 5 years ago. It now functions as a very discreet private clinic, but you can't just show up there. There are guards everywhere." William nodded, thoughtful. "I need more information. How can I contact you again?" Gabriel pulled an old scratched cell phone from his pocket. "This is my number. I don't always have credit, but I respond to messages when I'm near Wi-Fi." They exchanged contacts and William gave the boy some money, which Gabriel initially refused, but eventually accepted after insistence. "Be careful, sir. These people don't seem to be messing around," Gabriel warned before leaving, disappearing, into the shadows of the park. Back at the mansion, William couldn't sleep. The possibility that Elizabeth was alive consumed him. Why would Richard, his friend of decades, do something like this? What would be the motive? Money? Power? It didn't make sense. The next morning, the family lawyer, Dr. Goldman, called to inform him that the reading of Elizabeth's will would be the following day. William didn't even know that Elizabeth had made a will. This only increased his suspicions. "Elizabeth made a will when?" he asked the lawyer. "About 3 weeks ago, Mr. Harrison. She didn't mention it to you." 3 weeks before the supposed accident. William felt a chill run down his spine. No, she didn't mention anything. That night, William decided to investigate on his own. He drove to Queens following the directions Gabriel had given. He found the old St. Clair Hospital, a 3-story building that, despite appearing abandoned on the facade, showed signs of activity. Lights on in some windows, a discreet movement of people, cars parked. He parked a few blocks away and observed the place for almost 2 hours. He saw doctors coming and going, nurses changing shifts. It really seemed to function as a clandestine clinic. He was about to move closer when he noticed a familiar car entering through the rear parking lot. Richard's black Mercedes. William felt his heart race. Gabriel was right. His partner had some involvement with that place. He took his phone from his pocket and photographed the car entering, as evidence. He waited a few more minutes and saw Richard coming out, accompanied by a man in a white coat. They were talking seriously, and Richard handed an envelope to the man before leaving. With more questions than answers, William returned home. He needed to act with caution and intelligence. If Elizabeth was really alive and being held in that place against her will, he would need a plan to rescue her without putting her in danger. The reading of the will the next day could provide some answers. William spent the night awake, recalling every moment of the past few months with Elizabeth, looking for signs that something was wrong. She had been quieter, more introspective. At the time, he attributed this to the stress of her work as an art curator, but now he questioned everything. Dear reader, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. At Dr. Goldman's office, William found Richard and several other people close to the family. He tried to act normally, as if nothing had changed, but every look, every gesture from Richard now seemed suspicious. "Before we begin," said Dr. Goldman, "I would like to express my sincere condolences, William. Elizabeth was an extraordinary woman." William just nodded, unable to speak about Elizabeth in the past tense when he now had hope that she might be alive. The lawyer opened a folder and began to read. "This is the last will and testament of Elizabeth Harrison, written and signed on March 28, 2023. William listened carefully to every word. Elizabeth had left most of her personal assets to charities, something that matched her generous personality. But what caught William's attention was the provision regarding the shares of the technology company they had founded together, Harrison Innovations. "As for my shares in Harrison Innovations, corresponding to 25% of the company total, I leave 15% to my husband, William Harrison, and 10% to the New Dawn Foundation, represented by Mr. Richard Sullivan." William frowned. He had never heard of this foundation. He looked at Richard, who maintained a solemn expression, but noticed a slight tremor in his hands. "What foundation is this, Rick?" William asked, interrupting the reading. Richard cleared his throat. "It's a new charitable organization that I'm helping to establish. Elizabeth was very enthusiastic about the project when I told her about it. It focuses on innovative treatments for patients with rare neurological diseases." The explanation seemed plausible, but something didn't ring true. William decided to press further. "Curious that she never mentioned it to me." "Well, it was supposed to be a surprise," Richard replied, visibly uncomfortable. "She wanted to present the project when it was more structured." Dr. Goldman, sensing the tension, continued reading, but William wasn't really listening anymore. His mind was working at full speed, connecting dots. A foundation that nobody knew about receiving a significant portion of the company's shares, a will made weeks before the supposed accident, Richard visiting a clandestine hospital. At the end of the reading, William approached the lawyer privately. "Dr. Goldman, I need to know exactly when and how Elizabeth signed this will. Was she acting normally? Was anyone with her?" The lawyer seemed surprised by the questions. "She came to the office alone, made an appointment directly with me. She seemed perfectly normal, perhaps a bit tense. But I considered that natural given the subject matter." "Why? And did she explain why she was changing her will?" "She only said that she wanted to ensure her assets were distributed according to her current wishes. Nothing unusual for someone reviewing a will." William nodded, thanked him, and left quickly. In the elevator, he sent a message to Gabriel. "Need to talk to you, it's urgent." 3 hours later, they met again in Bryant Park. William told the boy about the will and the mysterious foundation. "This confirms my suspicions," said Gabriel. "They're keeping your wife alive because they need her for something related to the company. Maybe documents to sign or information that only she knows." "But why fake her death? Why all this theater?" questioned William. "Maybe so you wouldn't look for her? To take control of her part of the company without raising suspicions?" The theory made sense, but William still needed concrete evidence. "I need to get into that hospital, Gabriel. I need to see Elizabeth with my own eyes." Gabriel shook his head, concerned. "It's too risky, sir. There are guards everywhere, and they don't let anyone in without authorization. You managed to get in. I've been working there for months. They know me, trust that I won't cause problems. And even then, they never let me go up to the upper floors without supervision." William thought for a moment. "Could you take a picture of her? Any evidence that she's really there?" Gabriel hesitated. "I can try, but it would be very dangerous. If they catch me, I understand it's risky, and I don't want to put you in danger, but I need something concrete before taking any action. I can't simply accuse my partner of kidnapping without evidence." The boy finally agreed. "I'll try. Tomorrow I have to. Bring clean towels to the rooms. If she's there, I'll try to take a discreet photo." William thanked him and before Gabriel left asked, "Your mother, Maria, does she still work for any family?" "No," replied Gabriel with sadness in his voice. "She got sick 2 years ago. She has heart problems and can't work anymore. That's why I do odd jobs, to help with her medication." William felt a pang of guilt. How many Marias and Gabriels had passed through his life without him really noticing them? "I want to help you both regardless of what happens with Elizabeth. Give me your address. I'll send a doctor to see your mother." Gabriel initially resisted, but eventually accepted the help. He gave William the address of the small house where he lived with his mother in a suburb of Queens. That same night, William received a call from Richard. "Will, I'm worried about you. You disappeared after the will reading without saying anything to anyone." "I needed to be alone, process everything," William replied, trying to sound normal. "I completely understand. Look, I know it must be difficult to hear about that foundation, without having been informed before, but Elizabeth really wanted to do this. It was important to her." "It's okay, Rick. I trust her judgment." The lie came easily. "Actually, I'd like to know more about this foundation. Can we have lunch tomorrow to discuss?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Of course, but my schedule is a bit tight. How about next week?" "It needs to be tomorrow," William insisted. "I'm thinking of complimenting the donation that Elizabeth made. It would be a way to honor her memory." Another silence. "All right, let's have lunch tomorrow then, at Le Bernardin at noon." "Perfect." William knew he had just baited a hook. Richard would probably use this time to prepare a convincing story about the foundation. But that didn't matter. The real goal was to buy time for Gabriel to get some proof of Elizabeth's existence in that hospital. The next morning, William discreetly hired a trusted doctor to visit Gabriel's mother. Dr. Parker was an old friend who wouldn't ask unnecessary questions. William only said that he wanted to help the family of a former employee who was going through difficulties. At noon, he met with Richard at Le Bernardin, one of New York's most exclusive restaurants. Richard seemed tense despite his forced smile. "Will, it's good to see you out of the house. How are you feeling?" "One day at a time," replied William, carefully observing each reaction of his partner. "So, tell me about this new Dawn Foundation. When was it created? What exactly is the work they do?" Richard launched into an elaborate explanation about how the foundation was still in the structuring phase, how they planned to revolutionize the treatment of rare neurological diseases, and how Elizabeth had been enchanted with the project. "Did she visit any of the facilities?" asked William, feigning interest. "We didn't have our own facilities yet when we talked about it, but I showed her all the documentation, the plans." "And where will these facilities be?" Richard hesitated briefly. "We're finalizing the purchase of land on the Upper West Side. We want to build something modern, efficient." A lie. William could feel it. The foundation probably didn't exist. Beyond paper, a facade to divert the company's shares. The lunch continued with William asking seemingly innocent questions, and Richard becoming increasingly uncomfortable, though trying not to show it. When they were having dessert, William's cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Gabriel. "Got it, where can I show you?" William felt his heart race. "Rick, I need to go. An urgent appointment has come up." Richard seemed relieved at the end of the disguised interrogation. "Of course, no problem. We'll talk more about the foundation another time." William paid the bill and left hurriedly. He sent a message to Gabriel, arranging a meeting at a nearby shopping mall, a public and safe place. 20 minutes later, William found Gabriel in the food court of the mall. The boy seemed nervous, constantly looking around. "Did you get it?" asked William, barely containing his anxiety. Gabriel took his phone from his pocket and, after checking that no one was watching, showed a photo. The image was a little shaky and dark, but it was unmistakably Elizabeth. She was sitting by a window looking outside with a vacant expression. She seemed thinner, and her gaze had something different about it, but it was her. William felt his legs weaken. It was true. Elizabeth was alive. "Where exactly did you take this photo?" he asked with a choked voice. "Room 217, second floor. Like I said, she stays there most of the time. Sometimes they take her somewhere for a few hours, but she always comes back." Did she speak to you today?" Gabriel shook his head. "No. She was quiet, looking out the window. She seemed distant. They give her medicine every morning. I think they're tranquilizers or something." William felt a mixture of relief, anger, and determination. Elizabeth was alive, but she was being kept drugged and imprisoned. Why? What would Richard gain from this? "I need to get her out of there," he said, more to himself than to Gabriel. How? That place is like a fortress, and if they realize that you know, they might transfer her to another place or worse. William knew the boy was right. He needed to act cautiously. I'll think of something. Meanwhile, continue acting normally. If you notice any change in routine, any sign that they plan to move her, let me know immediately. In the following days, William began to investigate discreetly. He hired a private detective to research St. Clair Hospital and discovered that the property had been acquired by a company called Sullivan Med 3 years earlier, a company registered in the name of Richard's wife, Patricia Sullivan. He also discovered that the New Dawn Foundation had been registered only 1 month before Elizabeth's supposed accident, and the only board member was Richard himself. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together, but William still didn't fully understand the motive. Why not simply kill Elizabeth if the goal was to take control of her shares? Why keep her alive, hidden? The answer came from an unexpected source. Jennifer, Elizabeth's secretary at the art gallery, sought out William a few days after the funeral. "Mr. Harrison, sorry to bother you at such a difficult time, but there's something you need to know." Jennifer told him that, in the weeks before the accident, Elizabeth had been investigating some financial irregularities in the company. She had found documents suggesting that Richard was diverting significant funds to offshore accounts. "She was gathering evidence, Mr. Harrison. She said she was going to confront both of you once she was sure." That explained everything. If Elizabeth had revealed her discoveries, Richard would face not only financial ruin, but possibly imprisonment. Faking her death and keeping her hidden gave him time to cover his tracks. But there was still a problem: the shares. Even with the will, part of Elizabeth's shares would go to William, not Richard. Unless... "The foundation," muttered William, realizing the complete plan. Richard was using the foundation as a front to take control of those 10% of the shares, and he was probably planning to force Elizabeth to sign more documents, gradually transferring more power to him. It was an elaborate and dangerous plan, and now that William knew the truth, he himself was in danger. That night, William began to formulate a plan to rescue Elizabeth. He would need help, but he couldn't trust many people. The police were out of the question. Without concrete evidence and considering Richard's influence, it was unlikely they would believe him. He decided to trust 3 people: Dr. Parker, the doctor who was treating Gabriel's mother; Michael, his former driver who had been fired by Richard months before under dubious allegations; and Catherine, Elizabeth's younger sister, who lived in Boston and would come to New York immediately after receiving William's call. Meanwhile, Gabriel continued to be his eyes and ears inside the clandestine hospital, informing him about Elizabeth's routine and Richard's movements. A week after the funeral, Gabriel sent an alarming message. "They're talking about transferring her tomorrow. I heard the chief doctor talking with your partner. They're going to take her to another place early in the morning." William panicked. His plan wasn't completely ready. They needed to act that very night. He quickly gathered his small team. Dr. Parker would provide false medical credentials for William and Michael, who would pose as doctors transferring a patient. Catherine would wait in a car near the hospital, ready for the escape. "It's too risky," warned Dr. Parker. "If something goes wrong, we could all end up in serious trouble." "I understand the risks," replied William, "but I can't leave Elizabeth in their hands for 1 more day. If they transfer her, we may never find her again." At 2 a.m., the plan was put into action. William and Michael, dressed in white coats and using fake IDs, approached the rear entrance of the hospital. Gabriel was waiting for them, hidden in the shadows. "There are 2 guards at the main door and 1 at the back entrance," informed the boy. "The nurses change shifts at 2:30 a.m. That's when we have our best chance." They waited nervously until the indicated time. When they saw nurses leaving and others arriving, Gabriel gave the signal. William and Michael walked confidently toward the back entrance, carrying a medical folder and conversing as if they were in the middle of a professional discussion. The guard stopped them. "Identification." William presented the fake ID. "Dr. Andrews, this is Dr. Ferreira. We've come to evaluate the patient in room 217 for transfer." The guard consulted a clipboard. "I don't have anything about a scheduled evaluation for now." "Of course you don't," replied William with calculated impatience. "It was a last-minute change. Dr. Sullivan hasn't updated the system yet? Typical. I'll have to call him in the middle of the night again." He took out his cell phone and pretended to make a call, but the guard interrupted him. "No need to disturb Dr. Sullivan at this hour. You can enter, but be quick." It worked. The bluff of familiarity with Richard had convinced the guard. They entered the building, following the whispered instructions from Gabriel, who had entered separately, pretending to be one of the night cleaning staff. The hospital was quiet and partially dark. They climbed the stairs to the second floor, avoiding the elevator to not draw attention. In the corridor, a sleepy nurse barely raised her eyes when they passed. Room 217. William felt his heart almost jumping out of his mouth when he turned the doorknob. The door was unlocked. Inside, illuminated only by the faint light of the moon coming through the window, was Elizabeth. She was sleeping deeply, probably sedated. Even in the dark, William would recognize that face anywhere. His Elizabeth, his wife, alive. He approached carefully, trying to control his emotion. "Elizabeth," he called softly, touching her face. "Elizabeth, wake up, it's me, William." She didn't respond. She was deeply sedated. "We have to get her out of here now," whispered Michael. "We don't know how much time we have until someone checks." William nodded. Carefully, he disconnected the IV that was attached to Elizabeth's arm, as Dr. Parker, who had guided them in detail, had explained how to do. Then he wrapped her in a blanket and picked her up in his arms. Elizabeth was light, lighter than he remembered. How long had she been there, removed from the world, believing she was alone while he thought she had gone forever? They left the room with Elizabeth in William's arms. In the corridor, they came face to face with a nurse they hadn't seen before. "What are you doing? Who authorized the removal of this patient?" she asked, alarmed. Michael quickly intervened. "Emergency transfer. The patient is showing symptoms that can't be treated here. We have authorization from Dr. Sullivan." The nurse didn't seem convinced. "I need to verify this. Nobody told me about any transfer." "Check," replied Michael with confidence. "Call Dr. Sullivan right now. I'm sure he'll be happy to be woken up at 3 a.m. for something he's already authorized." The nurse hesitated, clearly not wanting to disturb Richard. At that moment, Gabriel appeared at the end of the corridor, deliberately knocking over a cart full of cleaning supplies, creating a noisy distraction. The nurse instinctively turned toward the noise, and Michael took the opportunity to push her into a supply closet, locking the door from the outside. "That will give us a few minutes," he said. "Let's go quickly." They descended the stairs as silently as possible, with William carrying Elizabeth. On the ground floor, the guard was distracted with his cell phone and barely noticed when they quickly passed, exiting through the back door. Catherine was waiting in the car, engine running. They carefully placed Elizabeth in the back seat, with her head resting on William's lap. "Let's go to the Hamptons house," instructed William. "Nobody knows about that place except us." Catherine stepped on the accelerator, and the car quickly departed, leaving behind the hospital and Gabriel, who had decided to stay to avoid raising suspicions about his involvement. "We did it, Kate," said William, with tears in his eyes as he stroked Elizabeth's hair. "She's alive. My Elizabeth is alive." During the 1-hour journey to the Hamptons, Elizabeth remained unconscious. Dr. Parker had explained that the sedatives would take several hours to completely leave her system. The country house, away from the main road and surrounded by dense vegetation, was the perfect hideout. William had bought the property years before in his late father's name and had never mentioned it to Richard or any other business partner. They settled Elizabeth in the master bedroom, while Dr. Parker, who had followed in another car, did a complete evaluation. "Physically, she seems okay," he informed after the examination. "She's dehydrated and a bit malnourished, but nothing serious. The biggest concern is the medications they were giving her. We need to know exactly what they were to understand the possible effects." "Gabriel mentioned tranquilizers," said William. "Probably benzodiazepines, judging by her state. They can cause confusion, loss of recent memory. We need to wait for her to wake up to assess her mental state." William nodded, holding Elizabeth's hand. He wouldn't leave her side until she woke up. Dear reader, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Hours later, as dawn was breaking, Elizabeth began to slowly awaken. First, small movements. Then her eyes opened, disoriented and confused. "Elizabeth," William called softly. "Elizabeth, it's me. You're safe now." She looked at him without immediate recognition, then frowned, as if trying to piece together a puzzle. In her mind, "Will?" she finally murmured, her voice hoarse from lack of use. Where am I? What happened?" "You're in our country house in the Hamptons. You were being held in a hospital against your will." Elizabeth closed her eyes again, as if the light was painful or the information too much to process. "I remember driving and then bright lights, but after that, just fragments. Richard was there and doctors. They told me I had been in an accident, that I had memory problems, that I needed to stay hospitalized." William felt the anger growing. "They lied to you. They made everyone believe you had died in a car accident." Elizabeth seemed unable to fully comprehend. Why would they do that? "We know you discovered something about Richard, about money being diverted from the company. Your secretary, Jennifer, told us. We believe he didn't want you to reveal this." The mention of Jennifer seemed to awaken something in Elizabeth. "The document, I found records of suspicious transactions, millions being transferred to shell companies. They were all linked to Richard. I was going to confront him, but I never got to do that. Someone intercepted me on the way." "Do you remember who?" Elizabeth shook her head, frustrated. "Two men. I had never seen them before. They forced my car to the shoulder, then I don't clearly remember anything until waking up in that hospital. Dr. Parker entered the room at that moment. 'Mrs. Harrison, good to see you're awake. I'm Dr. Parker. How are you feeling?' "Confused, weak, and my head, it feels like it's full of cotton." "That's normal considering the medications they were giving you. It will gradually improve over the next few days." While the doctor was doing more examinations, William's cell phone rang. It was Gabriel. "Sir, they discovered she's gone. It's crazy here. Your partner arrived half an hour ago and is furious. They're interrogating everyone." "Are you okay? Do they suspect you?" asked William, concerned. "I don't think so. I'm pretending I don't know anything, but you need to be careful. I heard them say they're going to look for you in every possible place. Thank you for warning me, Gabriel. Stay safe, and don't risk yourself anymore." After hanging up, William met with Michael and Catherine in the living room. "They already know that Elizabeth has disappeared. They're going to start looking." "Is this house safe?" asked Michael. "For now, yes. Nobody knows about it except us. But we can't stay here indefinitely. We need a better plan." "We should go to the police," suggested Catherine. "With Elizabeth alive, we have proof that something criminal happened." William shook his head. "We still don't have enough evidence against Richard. It would be her word against his, and he's influential, has connections. He could argue that Elizabeth is mentally unstable, that the treatment was legitimate." "So what do we do?" asked Michael. "We need the evidence that Elizabeth found about the diverted money. It's our best chance to incriminate Richard." Catherine frowned. "But where are those documents? At the company?" "No," replied Elizabeth, who had entered the room supported by Dr. Parker. She was still pale, but her eyes showed determination. "I made copies. I hid them in the false bottom of my jewelry box in the safe at our house." William smiled for the first time in days. Elizabeth had always been cautious. "Then we need to recover those documents, but I can't go back to the mansion. Richard is probably watching me." "I can go," offered Catherine. "I'm her sister. It would be natural for me to go get some personal mementos." "It's risky," warned Elizabeth. "Richard knows you and I are close. He might suspect." "I have a better idea," said Michael. "The gardener's son, Luis. He has access to the house to help his father. Nobody would pay attention to him coming and going." "Do you think we can trust him?" asked William. "Definitely. I worked with his father for years. They're honest people. And Luis owes me a few favors." William nodded. "Great. Get in touch with him, but be discreet." While Michael went to make the call, Elizabeth sat down beside William, holding his hand. "I still can't believe Richard did this. We were friends for so many years." "Money and power change people," replied William sadly. Or perhaps they just reveal who they really are. Elizabeth rested her head on his shoulder. I feel so sorry for what you must have gone through, believing I was... Don't think about that now, William gently interrupted. You're here, alive. That's all that matters. Michael returned with good news. Louise had agreed to help. He would enter the mansion the next day during his normal work routine and retrieve the jewelry box. Now we can only wait, said William. That night Elizabeth had nightmares. She woke up screaming several times in a cold sweat. William stayed by her side all night, comforting her when the ghosts of her captivity came back to haunt her. The E. Next morning they received a call from Gabriel. Sir, something's happening. Your partner is removing documents from the hospital, burning things. I think he's preparing to flee. He must have realized he won't be able to cover everything up, concluded William. Thank you, Gabriel. Don't go back to that hospital anymore. It's too dangerous now. A few hours later, Michael received confirmation that Louise had obtained the jewelry box. They would meet at a gas station on the road for the handover. I'll go get it, offered Michael. It's safer if you stay here. While they waited for Michael's return, William received an unexpected call. It was Patricia, Richard's wife. Will, her voice sounded anxious. Richard is acting strangely. He's packing bags, transferring money. When I ask what's going on, he changes the subject. I'm worried. William didn't know if he could trust her. Was Patricia complicit with her husband trying to get information? Patricia, I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe it's just a business trip. No, it's different. He seems desperate. And yesterday he mentioned Elizabeth in a strange way, as if she were still alive. William felt a chill. What exactly did he say? He was on the phone, didn't know I could hear him. He said something like, she's disappeared, we need to find her before she talks. Will, what's going on? Is she really... There was a moment of silence as William decided how much to reveal. Finally, he opted for a partial truth. Patricia, your husband is involved in something serious. I suggest you and your son leave home for a few days. Go visit your parents in Boston, perhaps. My God, is it that serious? Will, please tell me what's happening. I can't say anything more right now, just trust me. Take your son away from Richard for now. After hanging up, William told Elizabeth about the call. Patricia has always been a good person, commented Elizabeth. I doubt she knew what Richard was doing. Still, we need to be cautious. We don't know who else might be involved. Michael returned hours later with the jewelry box. Elizabeth, with trembling hands, opened the false bottom and removed a thick envelope. It's all here, she said, spreading the documents on the table. Transfer records, fraudulent contracts, shell companies. Richard diverted more than $50 million over the last 3 years. William examined the documents, impressed with the meticulousness with which Elizabeth had gathered the evidence. This is more than enough to incriminate him. We need to take this to the authorities. And how do we do that without exposing... Ourselves? Asked Elizabeth. If I appear in public now, I'll cause a shock. Legally, I'm dead. I had an idea, said Catherine. I know a federal prosecutor in Washington, D.C. He's incorruptible and has dealt with cases involving powerful businessmen before. We can send the evidence to him and explain the situation. That's a good option, agreed William. But first, we need to ensure our safety. Richard is getting desperate, and that makes him even more dangerous. That night, as they finalized preparations to send the documents to the prosecutor, they received an unexpected visit. The discreet alarm of the property sounded, indicating that someone had entered the grounds. Michael, who had military experience, grabbed a shotgun that was kept in the house and positioned himself strategically. Stay away from the windows, he instructed. I'll check who it is. William took Elizabeth to the innermost room of the house, while Catherine and Dr. Parker hid in other rooms. Minutes later, Michael returned with Gabriel. The boy was breathless, as if he had run a long way. Gabriel, how did you find us here? Asked William, surprised. I followed you on the night of the rescue, confessed the boy. I was worried. Wanted to know where you would be in case you needed help. What happened? Why did you come here? Gabriel tried to catch his breath. Your partner, he found out everything. About me helping you. He sent men after my mother. William felt his blood freeze. Is your mother okay? Yes, thank God. A neighbor warned that strange men were asking about us, and we managed to leave before they arrived. I left my mother at my aunt's house in Jersey City. I came to warn you that they're looking for you. I think someone saw me talking to Michael this morning near the gas station." It was worse than William had imagined. Richard was tracking all their movements, using all resources to find them. "It's not safe to stay here," he concluded. "We need to leave immediately." "Where to?" asked Elizabeth, who had joined them after hearing the voices. "I have an apartment in Westchester," offered Dr. Parker. "It's in my late mother's name. Nobody would associate it with me or you." It was the best option available. In less than an hour, they were all in two different cars, following secondary roads to avoid the main highways, where they could be more easily tracked. Dr. Parker's apartment was simple, but spacious enough to accommodate everyone. Elizabeth was still weak, but improving each day, both physically and mentally. The next morning, Catherine sent the documents to her contact in Washington, D.C., using a trusted courier service. She also prepared a detailed statement from Elizabeth explaining everything that had happened. 2 days later, they received the news the prosecutor had initiated a confidential investigation. FBI teams were about to execute search and seizure warrants at Richard's companies and the clandestine hospital. "It worked," said William, relieved. "Now we just need to wait." But the wait would be shorter than they imagined. That same night, while watching the news on television, they saw the breaking news. Richard Sullivan, renowned businessman, had been arrested trying to board a private flight to Mexico. He was being charged with fraud, embezzlement, document, forgery, and surprisingly, kidnapping. "Kidnapping?" questioned Elizabeth, confused. The answer came in the continuation of the report. Patricia Sullivan had approached the authorities with a shocking story. Her husband had kidnapped and held captive Elizabeth Harrison, wife of his partner, William Harrison, after she discovered his illicit activities. "Patricia reported him," muttered William, surprised. "She's always been a woman of integrity," commented Elizabeth. "She must have been horrified when she discovered the truth." In the following days, the story dominated the news. Elizabeth Harrison, presumed dead, was alive. William gave an exclusive interview to a respected newspaper, explaining how he discovered the truth thanks to a brave young boy named Gabriel, and how he rescued his wife from captivity. The public was shocked and fascinated. The story of the millionaire and his resurrected wife captured the national imagination. Richard, meanwhile, faced multiple charges, and without support even from his own family, seemed destined to spend many years in prison. A week after Richard's arrest, Elizabeth made her first public appearance at a carefully organized press conference. Still a bit pale, but with determination restored in her eyes, she told her version of the story, especially thanking Gabriel and his mother, Maria. "Without this boy's courage, I would probably still be trapped in that place, or worse," she declared, her voice choked with emotion. In the months that followed, as the case proceeded through the courts, William and Elizabeth worked to rebuild their lives. The company underwent a complete restructuring, with new partners and rigorous financial transparency policies. Gabriel and his mother were generously rewarded. William bought a comfortable house for them in a safe neighborhood and created a fund to ensure the boy's education and Maria's medical care. "I don't know how to thank you," said Maria, emotional, when William handed her the keys to the new house. "Gabriel has always had a good heart, but I never imagined it would lead us here." "We are the ones who should thank you," replied Elizabeth, hugging her. "Your son gave us back everything." A year after the rescue, Elizabeth had fully recovered. The trauma was still there, manifesting occasionally in nightmares or moments of anxiety, but she faced each day with renewed strength. On a sunny afternoon, as they walked through Central Park, William asked a question he had been considering for months. "What do you think about using part of our money to create a foundation, a real one, to help children like Gabriel, to give opportunities to those who don't have them?" Elizabeth smiled, squeezing his hand. "I think it's a wonderful idea. We can call it the Fresh Start Foundation. I like the name. And maybe Gabriel can help us when he's older. He has a natural talent for noticing what others don't see. And a huge heart," added Elizabeth. "Did you know he visits Patricia and her son regularly? He said they're not to blame for what Richard did." William shook his head, amazed. That boy teaches us something new every day. As the sun began to set over the park, casting golden tones over the lake, William hugged Elizabeth, silently thanking for the second chance they had received. A second chance that began with the courageous words of a boy, "Sir, your wife is alive." Dear reader, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Years passed since that fateful day at the cemetery. Gabriel, now a young man of 19, had just entered law school, his education fully funded by the Fresh Start Foundation. The foundation, created by William and Elizabeth, had grown exponentially, helping hundreds of children and adolescents from underprivileged communities across the United States. They offered scholarships, medical assistance, and mentoring programs, transforming lives that would otherwise have few opportunities. Maria, Gabriel's mother, now worked as an administrative coordinator for the foundation. Her heart condition controlled thanks to the proper treatment she had finally been able to receive. She personally supervised the assistance program for single mothers, inspired by her own journey. Richard Sullivan was serving his sentence in a federal prison, convicted to 18 years for his crimes. Patricia had divorced him shortly after his arrest and rebuilt her life. With Elizabeth's help, she had also become one of the foundation's directors, focusing especially on programs for women who were victims of abusive relationships. On a Saturday afternoon, the Fresh Start Foundation was celebrating its 5th anniversary with a party at its headquarters, a modern and welcoming building on the Upper West Side of New York. Children ran through the courtyard, volunteers served food, and music filled the air. William observed everything from a corner, moved to see how much good had come from such a terrible situation. Elizabeth approached, handing him a glass of juice. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, following his gaze to the courtyard where Gabriel was animatedly talking with some of the foundation's new scholarship recipients. "About how life takes unexpected turns," replied William. "6 years ago, we were at rock bottom. I believed I had lost you forever. Now, look around us. So much life, so much hope." Elizabeth rested her head on his shoulder. All because a brave boy decided to do the right thing, even knowing the risks. Gabriel, noticing he was being observed, waved to them with a smile. In recent years, he had become almost a son to William and Elizabeth, who were never able to have biological children. The bond formed through that traumatic experience had transformed into a genuine family relationship. "He's going to be a brilliant lawyer," commented William with pride. "He already has that innate sense of justice and the courage to defend it." "And to think he could have followed a completely different path," reflected Elizabeth. "Growing up in poverty, without opportunities, many young people end up making desperate decisions in those circumstances." William nodded, thoughtful. "That's why this work is so important. Each child we help is a story that can take a different direction." At that moment, Gabriel approached, accompanied by a shy young girl, approximately 14 years old. "Wilbeth, I want to introduce Sophie. She's just been selected for our scholarship program. She'll be studying at St. Paul's Academy next year." The girl, with eyes bright with expectation and nervousness, formally extended her hand. "It's an honor to meet you. My mother told me your story, how you found each other. It's almost like a movie." Elizabeth smiled, ignoring the extended hand and giving the girl a warm hug. "The pleasure is ours, Sophie. Gabriel told me about your talent for mathematics. We're eager to see how far you'll go." I want to be an engineer," said Sophie, gaining confidence. "No one in my family has reached university before." "Well, you'll be the first," affirmed William with conviction. "And I bet you won't be the last. That's how we change things, one life at a time." As they talked, Maria appeared to announce that the foundation's anniversary cake would be cut soon. Gabriel and Sophie followed her, leaving William and Elizabeth alone again. "You know what's funny?" commented Elizabeth, watching Gabriel walking away. "Richard created that fake foundation as part of a criminal plan. He never imagined it would end up inspiring something real that would transform so many lives." William smiled. "Sometimes, even from the worst intentions, something beautiful can be born." Someone just needs to have the courage to do things differently. Elizabeth took his hand, interlacing her fingers with his. Like a boy who had the courage to go up to a millionaire at a funeral and say, "Sir, your wife is alive." William gently squeezed her hand. The moment that changed everything. That night after the party, William and Elizabeth received a special visitor at their home, the prosecutor from Washington, D.C., who had conducted the case against Richard. Now a federal judge, Judge Henderson continued to be an important ally of the foundation. "I have news that I thought you should know personally," he said after the initial greetings. "Richard is requesting a plea deal. He's offering information about other businessmen involved in the embezzlement schemes." "After 5 years?" questioned William, surprised. "Why now?" It seems he finally realized there are no more possible appeals or legal maneuvers. His last appeal was denied by the Supreme Court last month. The reality of the full sentence has finally hit him. Elizabeth served coffee for everyone while absorbing the news. And what happens if the plea is accepted? He may get a reduction in his sentence depending on the relevance of the information. But don't worry, there's no possibility of him getting out anytime soon, considering the severity of his crimes. William nodded, thoughtful. "You know, in the first years after all this, I carried so much anger. I wanted to see him pay for every minute of suffering he caused. But now, encouraged the judge when William paused, now I realize that his greatest punishment isn't prison. It's seeing how we transformed something terrible into something wonderful. It's knowing that he lost not only his freedom, but his family, his reputation, while we moved forward building something meaningful." Elizabeth took her husband's hand with teary eyes. "Living well is the best revenge, as they say." Judge Henderson smiled. "That's a wise perspective. Few manage to transform trauma into purpose, as you have done." After the judge's departure, William and Elizabeth sat on the porch of their home, contemplating the starry sky of New York, a rarity in a city normally so polluted. "Sometimes I still have nightmares," Elizabeth confessed softly. "I dream that I'm in that hospital room again, looking out the window, waiting for a rescue that never comes." William hugged her tighter. "I have mine too. I dream that I never believed Gabriel, that I never found you. But we wake up and we're here," completed Elizabeth, nestling in his arms. "Real alive together. And it all began with a boy's courage," reflected William. "It makes you think about how many important truths we fail to hear because they come from voices we're not accustomed to valuing." Elizabeth nodded. "That's why our work at the foundation is so important. We give voice to those who are normally not heard." That night, before they slept, William picked up a book from the bedside table, the diary he had begun to write after Elizabeth's rescue. It wasn't for publication, just a personal record of the extraordinary journey they had lived. On the first page he had transcribed the words that changed everything, in careful handwriting. "Sir, your wife is alive," said the poor boy to the millionaire at the funeral. Simple, direct, unlikely words. Words no one would expect to hear, especially from a poor boy at a luxurious funeral. Words that, against all odds, were true. In a world where so many truths are silenced and so many lies amplified, those words had broken barriers of class, power, and appearances. A reminder that truth, no matter how unlikely or from whom it comes, has a power that cannot be underestimated. The end of the story. Dear reader, just as Gabriel had the courage to tell the truth when no one would believe him, you too can make a difference with a simple gesture. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters to us just as Gabriel's mattered to Elizabeth. Until the next story,